On to the main event. Camilla Läckberg is the prize-winning, best-selling author of the Fjallbacka series, which has sold more than 23 million copies worldwide. She's joined tonight by New York Times best-selling author Karin, founder of the Save the Libraries Project, a nonprofit organization established to support libraries and library programming. Welcome, both of you. Thanks so much for being here with us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yay! Fantastic. I read this. I got it 3 days ago, and I'm like, you know what? It's a pandemic. I need to sit down and read. This is my work. Fantastic. Like Woman Scorned, sexy, sexy. I got the description of it, and your description was like sexy, 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 and my description for my stuff was like she writes books. So. Obviously, I don't know how to even write about myself, but my first question is, how do you say your name in Swedish? Because I would say Camilla Läckberg.
Yeah, that's the English pronunciation of it. In Swedish, in total Swedish, I would say Camilla Läckberg. And that's my author name, but in my legal name, because I also have my husband's name, so my legal name is in Swedish is actually Camilla Läckberg Sköld.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a lot. I'm not even going to try that because I'll probably say something filthy. So this is the man that you're with now.
Yes.
MMA fighter.
MMA fighter, so he can protect me at all times.
Yeah. Do you need protection? I hear Sweden's pretty dangerous right now. The mean streets.
Well, I hear that's a word in the U.S., but I would say Sweden is pretty safe.
Yeah, you think so?
I'm taking care of myself, so.
Well, you know, I'm not gonna ask you too much about this book because I think people should read it. They should buy it and they should read it. And they should do that because I think it's fantastic, and obviously I have amazing taste.
And
but I'm gonna
here, so that's get me a little bit blushed. So please move on before I get in there.
I'm gonna ask you about you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So this is
no filter, so you can ask anything you want, and you probably know that by now.
I do.
Crazy cat lady. So
this is like my first one that I always ask everybody, like even when I'm not interviewing them. And that's, have you ever been fired from a job? And was it the best thing or the worst thing that happened to you?
I have actually been fired from a job, but it was part of mass fire. You know, they fired around 1,000 people because the company was being bought up. And the moment I was fired was when my first child was 3 months old, and my first book had in that 3 months earlier had been accepted for publishing. So I took it as some kind of divine sign that, okay, I need to focus on my writing.
Was this an American company? I didn't think that Swedish women could get fired when they were pregnant and had babies.
It happened in Sweden too. It was a Swedish company, big government company, and no, it happens here as well.
Oh, well, that's good to know. So when people meet you and you tell them you're a writer, what types of books do they think that you write?
Well, in Sweden, most people by now know what kind of books that I write. And I think that I'm quite well known as a very broad public, broad entertainment writers. So I think most people in Sweden know that by now, and it's sometimes frowned upon because you're supposed to be this really fine, cultural, narrow, hard to read writer. I've never really been that kind of person or writer, so I just want to own my big broad audience kind of writing.
Yeah, I've got a lot of big broads who read my stuff too. So I met you in Lyon for the Quai du Polar. This is my fantastic. Yeah. And that was the first time I had met you. And then you met with my agent in New York.
Yeah.
And she told me this hilarious story about you, that you have a goal that when you're number one on the New York Times list, you're going to get the whole list tattooed on your body.
Well, that was actually a promise I made when I did a book tour in the US in 2010. And I've never been shy to say that it's one of my big life goals to really make it in the US. For us Swedes, there's this holy grail with making it in the US. So I did make a promise to an American journalist that if I would ever make the number one on the New York Times bestseller list, I will tattoo that day's 10 top list somewhere on my body.
Somewhere. Oh, you didn't specify where?
No, I haven't specified where.
Okay.
And,
Okay.
if it happens, I hope for short names, not Alexander McCall Smith.
Yeah.
Well, it works though.
That's right. But it's really strange as women to say that you want something successful.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of frowned upon. Like, if a man says, I've been a state senator for 6 months, I think I can be president. We're like, yes, that's fantastic. If a woman says it, you're like, well, you don't have enough experience. Maybe you should.
Delusional. Yeah.
Yeah. So where do you get that confidence?
I'm hubris, I think. No, but I've always been taught from growing up with my family and my upbringing that you can do anything if you work hard. So I do believe in myself that if I work hard enough, I will be able to achieve anything. And I also think, it's a cliche, but if you reach for the stars, you can reach the treetops. I do believe in that, even though it sounds like a cliche. If I don't dare to dream big, I'm never going to be able to achieve those big dreams. And I don't think it's impossible. It's just a little bit harder.
Yeah. Well, did your parents, they sent you to a writing class, right?
It was actually my then husband who gave me, as a Christmas gift, gave me a writing class. And that was just because he was so sick of me talking so much about how I wanted to become a writer and how much I wanted to write books. So finally he was like, oh, okay, I'm going to shut her up. I'm going to give her a writing class. And then I'm never going to hear anything more about it after that. But yeah, things happened.
And now he's your ex-husband and you're very successful.
Yes.
Well, so like it takes a lot of hubris to write a novel. I mean, and for me, it was like a lot of stupidity because I'm going to write a book and it's really hard and you don't realize that until you actually sit down and do it. So was that what the class did for you? It made you just sit down and do it and you had assignments and.
Exactly. I actually started writing my first book, The Ice Princess, during this writing course. And as you said, it made me actually believe that it was something that maybe I could do it. But that being said, it still took me 2.5 years to write my first book because I was working full-time as an economist. I have a business degree in economy and I was working full-time as that. So I wrote, evenings, weekends, vacations. And I did have that voice all the time in my head that said that, well, how can you think that you could write a book? It's too hard. It's too magical. It's not something you could do. You're just a mere mortal. And, I was fighting that confidence the whole time.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I read this interview with this author who said men never question, like, do I have the agency to write this novel, or should I do this, or do I have something interesting to say? And I think for me, that was part of my process, was like, okay, well, there's a shit ton, of crime writers out there. What can I do that's different? Yeah. And it wasn't until I found what I thought was something different to write about that I felt justified in sitting down and doing it.
Yeah, I've found that being selfish as a writer is a really good thing, because sometimes people say that, well, you have this theme in your book. This must be because you found that this is something that's interesting for the market, or you write about this because this is what people want. I could never be able to write a single word or finish a single sentence if I would be thinking about what people want. I really don't care about what my readers want. I'm sorry, I love my readers, but I do not care about what they want. I write for one reader, and that's myself, and that's how selfish I am. And that's how selfish you need to be as a writer.
Yeah. I mean, but it's not really selfish. It's just like knowing and having direction. And one of the things I was constantly asked when I started touring was, what about your children? Which was weird because I'm like, what children? Do I have kids I don't know about? And it just drove me crazy because it was like they were laying in wait to call me a bad mother, or you know, there were all these other negative connotations about me being out in the world and doing this. I think it's changed some. I don't think it's changed a lot, but I think for you, so this is how I heard about you. The first time I heard about you was I was talking to Sarah Bladel. And who's our friend, who's a Danish crime writer, an exceptional human being.
I call her my big sister.
Yeah, she's great. But she said that you went on Dancing with the Stars and you lost like 10 or 15 pounds or something. And we were both like, huh, that seems like the best diet ever.
Yeah.
Well, but what made you do that?
Well, I did that in 2012. And when they asked me, I was terrified. And then I said, yeah. But I loved that. I loved that experience because it really challenged me, because as a writer and as a person, I've been a nerd my whole life. I was a nerdy girl with the, you know, thick glasses and the Harry Potter hairstyle. And I've never been like the feminine. So doing that and really learning to dance and, you know, having to be strong but feminine was really, really, really cool. But it was scary because also as a writer, I work by myself. I'm not on a stage. I do perform sometimes, you know, we do all these interviews on stage where you also have to be a performer and you have to meet an audience, but you usually do it with clothes on. And I wasn't used to performing with my body and having an audience. And I just think it was really, really challenging, and therefore it was really useful. I like to do things that scare me because that's the way I grow. And also, you know, it was scary to show your butt on television. I have to say that.
Well, I have no butt, so that's it's just.
I had one in 2012.
If I look over my shoulder, I see my calves. That's But so I did something really crazy. I had like a midlife crisis, and I went on television on a show called Holy Moly, which is competitive putt-putt. I'm super competitive.
What?
Putt-putt, mini golf.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I ended up riding a bucking gopher, like a mechanical bull.
Yeah.
It threw me 20 feet down a mountain, and then I had to putt. And I look back on it and think, girl, you lost your damn mind. That is nothing I would ever do in my entire life. I'm always,
you know, actually also in another TV show went into a snake pit with about like 80 snakes. Yeah. Okay.
Well, so
you have to lift them to find clues. You have to lift the goddamn snakes to find clues on their bellies. And I was like, yeah, that's
on their belly. What were these, like chubby snakes or?
No, there were all kinds of snakes, all kinds of, from pythons to the little small ones with like red rings that looks really dangerous and poisonous.
And they had clues on their bellies.
Yes.
Who was like the person who wrote those clues on those snakes?
We do not know.
Okay. But so what I learned from my experience was it changed my perspective in writing.
Yeah.
Because I met people and I've done some crazy things. Like I swam with sharks when I was in Melbourne. Yeah. And I'm terrified of heights. I climbed the Sydney Harbour Bridge.
Yeah.
I did a sauna in Finland, which means I would ran naked into the Baltic and jumped in a hole in the ice.
Yeah.
Insane stuff. But every time I did something crazy like that, I felt like it brought something different to my writing.
Exactly.
So how did that change your perspective in writing and storytelling?
I think it made me bolder because it scared the hell out of me to do something like that. It was live television. Every Friday it was live television, and you had to do the cha-cha and the rumba or whatever in front of an audience and in front of 2 million people in Sweden. Okay, I know that's not good ratings in America, but we're 10 million people.
Half of Sweden.
Yeah, so it's like, yeah, 20% of Sweden was watching, and every person you knew or ever known was watching you showing your butt on TV. I think that courage really was something that put in my books, and also it also enhanced my like competitive edge. Edge. I compete. I continue to compete after the TV show. I actually continue to compete in Latin dancing. So I've done one Pro-Am competition in New York and one in Boston. And I think that competition, nerve really is something that I've been able to put in my books, that I can do that. If I practice, if I work harder, if I really put myself out there, I can do that. And I think that's part of why I dared to do a new series like with the Golden Cage, because I had and I have a very successful series in the Fjallbacka series, and I'd done 10 books, and everyone was calling me batshit crazy for doing something so completely different. But I think that is something that actually started with the Dancing with the Stars competition, that I dared to go out on a limb and do something that is not in character for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I don't like scary movies. I don't like being scared.
I love them.
But I am extremely competitive, but I'm not an asshole about it. Like if I'm competing with a friend and they win, I'm really happy for them. And I'm like, you just have to be better next time, to me.
Yeah.
And part of what I loved about this was the intense practice. And people don't understand, when you're on Dancing with the Stars, you are practicing your butt off.
8 hours a day for 15 weeks.
I mean, that's insane. That's like a full-on exercise class, 8 hours a day.
That's a military boot camp for you for 15 weeks.
But it takes the focus of it, I think, is what you really, if you think about what authors do and how we have those intense moments of focus on story and writing and the discipline that takes, it kind of makes sense that you do something like that or find an outlet like that. I'm a really horrible dancer. Like no amount of training could ever help me. I was dancing once and someone called an ambulance with a defibrillator, but I started taping myself dancing in hotel rooms because I thought it would be funny.
Yeah.
And it's just all part of that midlife crisis. So you put me to shame with your award winning. But I will say, you mentioned New York because you love New York. You've been 11 billion times. You also
married there.
You also talked about Sweden looking at America as the goal, right? Success in America.
Yeah.
So I know for a fact that Minnesota, 10% of their population identify as Swedish American, right?
Yeah.
So you've got Minnesota, then California, I guess because the railroads, because a lot of Swedish immigrants worked on the railroads and they got to California, are like, we're not going back. It's too long. And Illinois, which Sarah Bladel wrote about, I think in Racine, Wisconsin, she wrote about Danish people. So like California, I understand, but Minnesota and Illinois, I mean, is it the crappy weather? I mean, what exactly would make Swedish people settle in that particular area? Was it like the adventure, the pioneer spirit?
Terrible, or it just reminded them very much about the crappy weather in Sweden. I'm not quite sure, but I do have a very close connection to American that way myself as well. My grandmother had 2 brothers who emigrated to the States in the 1920s, and they ended up in Chicago. Eventually, the sons of one of these brothers, my mother's cousin, ended up in Denver. So I spent a lot of time with that family, the Gustafsons, in Denver, Colorado. And I'm thinking it just, reminded them very much about the Swedish weather.
Mm-hmm. There's a museum I visited in Philadelphia It's on the Delaware River. I'm looking in my notes to see if I wrote down what it's called. It's a Swedish museum. And it's in the location of New Sweden, because you guys were like the Dutch. You're like New Amsterdam, New Sweden.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? And it never worked. It never worked. But
New York worked pretty well.
Sorry?
New York worked.
Yeah, that worked. Well, that was the English, right? Yeah. Yeah. That was some guy named York. Great slave trader. Yeah, thanks for that, England. That's worked out really well. But there is like this connection. They're all the Swedish Historical Museum. It's in Philadelphia. And I mean, I remember looking through it and thinking just how shocking it was, because we all know about the Irish diaspora. But we don't really get in our school books the lesson of the Swedish people coming here. Swedish, I'm reading from my notes here, big part of the transatlantic slave trade. You know, your colonies and all that. Lots of slaves went through those colonies. You created the leg iron.
Bartholomew, or
St. Bartholomew. So, like, you know, you have a colonial history like most of the Scandinavian. So, you know, I've been following a little bit about what's going on with the Black Lives Matter protests that have been in Gothenburg. And so, you know, can you talk a little bit about that, just for people who don't know that much about Sweden and what's going on there?
I do think that, yes, it's been a very, very big thing in Sweden, and we very closely followed the development in America. And there's always the division between people, you know, some people that say that, well, we don't have these issues in Sweden. And then we have these big groups that says that, okay, yes, we do have these issues in Sweden. And of course, I've talked a lot about this with my Black friends, and you know, we talked a lot about how different our experience is being white and being Black also in Sweden. I do think it's a bigger difference in America, but we do have a difference in Sweden as well, in how you're treated and how the police treats you and how you're regarded by society. So it's something that we have to deal with as well as society in Sweden.
Well, you know, it's really interesting watching this blow up worldwide, because I think it's made a lot of people have to reconsider what their society really is, especially in some Scandinavian countries, and to think about the colonial past and that sort of thing.
The white people like to think that we're not privileged, which is kind of weird, but we do want to keep that image of ourselves not being privileged, but we are. Of course we are. It's like men wanting to keep the image that they don't have any advantages over women, and we're like, let us think about that for a while.
But you can't blame them. It's fantastic. I mean, to be a white man is like, I do not blame you for not wanting to give that up, sir. It is.
I mean, no one has ever given away power freely. So I do understand that. It's like, congratulations, we should throw you a party just for being a wealth male, you know, born with a penis. So, yeah.
This is exactly what Politics and Prose wanted us to talk about. So you're married now to an MMA fighter. Yeah.
I kind of ex-husbands.
So is this to get rid of your ex-husbands, or just be? No.
I kind of like my ex-husbands.
Okay.
I've had good relationships with my previous two husbands as well. So we're kind of very much a modern family. I love that show, by the way. So I've you know, instead of antagonizing them, I've decided that keep them really close is a good way. I'm even best friends with my previous ex-husband's ex-wife. You know, her kids are my bonus kids. I thought that would be wise. And I just don't like the way that people have started to have a way of thinking that just because you divorce, you need to be enemies. I don't really get that. I think you've loved each other at some point, and you
really you don't really get that. What's this book about here?
Just the assholes. Those you need to get rid of.
Yeah, I think you can get really lucky, or you cannot get really lucky. You know,
someone sometimes said that, you know, you don't only have to choose a really great guy to get married to. You have to find someone that's really great to divorce from.
Ah, long-term thinking.
Yeah.
That's really good advice.
Yeah.
So this might be like obvious to people who know you, but would you say you're shy or extroverted, introverted or extroverted?
I'm a very strange combination of both, because I'm an only child. I was brought up as an only child. I have spent so much time by myself reading books and always enjoy my own company. But at the same time, I have, lots of friends that I like to spend time with, and I like to have dinner where I cook for 20 people and we have this great big Italian style dinner. But I like the combination. I couldn't only be social, but I couldn't only be, in solitaire. I'm weird combination. Really weird combination.
So my most embarrassing interview I ever did was actually in a sauna in Finland.
Yeah, were you naked?
And I was in a towel.
I would get that. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're like, "Oh, okay, if you want to wear a towel, American."
They thought we were really weird.
Yeah. And I had to hit myself with the birch leaves, and I mean, it was just most surreal. So, do you have like a weird interview other than this one that you've done?
I think I've gotten desensitized at this point after almost 20 years of doing interviews. I would say one thing though that I always react to in interviews. If I do interviews abroad, it quite often happens that a journalist asks me, both men and women actually, ask me, how do you combine being an author and a mother? And I always get very antagonized by that question. And I always return it back to them. And I say that, well, how often have you asked my male colleagues, how do you combine being an author and a father? That shuts them up quite quickly, actually.
Yeah,
And
I always got
that, well,
asked,
never.
why do you write about strong women? That's what I got asked.
Yeah.
Like, well, don't you know strong women? I mean, but why don't you ask men that? Nobody asked Lee Child why Jack Reacher is invincible.
Yeah, exactly.
What is the most valuable lesson you've learned about being successful?
I think the most valuable lesson is that choose your friends wisely, because there are, the more successful you get, the more people want to spend time with you. And to be really honest, I'm quite a boring person. So if people desperately want to spend time with me without knowing me, I get very suspicious, because I'm like, I'm really boring. Why do you want to spend time with me? So only the people who truly, truly love me will spend time with me. And I think that's something that I really learned through the years, to pick my friends carefully.
Yeah. I learned very early on, an author I worshipped was an asshole to me.
Yeah.
I thought, that's a really important, because this person probably was not an asshole in the beginning.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of work to be an asshole.
Yeah.
To be angry.
Yeah.
And honestly, I forget people who I'm mad at, and then I'll be talking to them and I'm like, oh, now I remember I don't like you.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like a goldfish in my hatred. So I guess I'm really lucky that way.
No, I'm like, really, I can hold on to a grudge for a very, very long time. Yes.
Okay.
I'm like an elephant that way. I have a very, very long memory, but the second someone says, I'm sorry, and really means it, it's gone. Then it's erased.
A genuine apology, I think, is a mark of character. I really do. It's hard to do. It's hard to not say, but.
Yeah, I know. I have to ask you though, you were talking about Lyon, speaking about things to not forget, etc. The food in Lyon, can we talk about that?
Oh my God.
Well, I'm still traumatized. I was so hungry when I left there after 3 days. Actually, I never make demands. I don't have a rider. I don't have a big demands list. I don't, have any diva behavior when it comes to traveling to different countries and doing the tours. But I've actually made the demand to my French publishing house that if I'm ever going back to Lyon, you need to give me some decent food.
Oh, how did they take that? Because they think Lyon is like this exquisite cuisine.
I don't know how they took that. I asked my agent to tell them. I was too scared to tell them myself.
I was with Megan Abbott, and she's vegetarian. And
oh my God, I cannot be a
they
vegetarian.
passed this bowl past us, and it looked like potato salad. And she was like, "Oh, thank God," because everything was meat.
Yeah.
And she gets it, and she's like, "Oh, this potato salad looks good." And they said, "No, that's pig ears in mayonnaise." It's like,
I think we need to enlighten people about why we're talking this way, why we're talking a little bit of trash about Lyon and the food. It's only intestine food,
yeah,
and like figures and snouts and butt cheeks and
loins.
It's everything you don't want to eat on an animal.
Yeah, it's like the part that they throw away. Leon's like, "What are you going to eat that? We'll put it with some mayonnaise in a bowl."
Yes, I mean, I was so hungry. I was so hungry when I went home.
I had so much bread.
Yeah,
I'm still sweating out bread from that. That was years ago. I mean, it was, yeah. And I'm allergic to a lot of things, so I usually lose weight when I tour anyway, because I'm terrified I'm going to eat something and blow up and then die. But I lost 4 pounds in a week there. So that's a great, if you're looking for a diet, the Lyon diet is fantastic.
A pig snout diet.
We should say though that the crime festival is amazing.
It's amazing, and the city is amazing. The city is amazing, and the crime fest is amazing. It's just the intestine food that it's hard to.
It is beautiful. It's right there on the river, and it's a college.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah.
What's the Harlan Coben told me like years ago that the problems you have when you're successful are better than the problems you have when you're not. So
it's better to cry in a Jaguar than on a bus.
Yeah. I don't think he'd fit in a Jaguar. He's a tall guy. What's the worst part about being successful? I'm going to guess it's the lack of anonymity, because you're a pretty big superstar in Sweden, right?
Well, I'm always a little bit torn about this, because yes, in Sweden, everyone kind of basically recognizes me, and as I mentioned before, I'm on the gossip pages like weekly, and everything I do is of big interest. But I also think that as someone public, you cannot complain about it, because it's a choice. I don't have to have an Instagram. I don't have to do TV shows. I don't have to be a public figure. I can actually get off that train at any moment I want. So it's a choice, and I can't complain about it. And also it gives me a lot of wonderful experiences and advantages. I get to meet people that I admire. I mean, heck, I'm being interviewed by Karin that I've read for years and years and years. One example, and I met so many people that I've admired and I wanted to meet, and some of them I call my friends today. I get to do amazing things. I get to experience amazing things, and readers give me a lot of love. I mean, when I was an economist, there weren't people coming up to me in the street and like, approaching me and saying that, "Oh, I love what you do." Never.
Excellent graph.
No one ever said that to me. So I kind of consider myself privileged.
Yeah.
And that it's a choice. I can get off the train at any moment, so I can't complain.
Well, I mean, how many people do you know who do for a living exactly what they want to do? I mean, that is just rare.
We're living the dream. Our hobby is what we, get to do to support ourselves, and people are loving us for it. I mean, boo-hoo.
Yeah. Well, I always say, don't be fooled by the rocks I got. I'm still Karin from the block.
You're so J-Lo, and I'm too. Yeah,
that's right.
You're J-Lo and I'm Beyonce.
There's a conspiracy theory going around that Beyonce is Italian. She's not really black. And I'm like, Solange should be, this is my moment.
Yeah.
That's how crazy we are right now, where they're questioning Beyonce.
Well, I'm not actually Sweden. I'm actually black.
There you go.
Yeah.
So where's the weirdest place you've ever toured?
Well, apart from Leon and the food.
Yeah, let's assume that's
Yeah.
top of the list.
Iceland. I love Iceland, but it's like going to the moon.
Yeah.
But I would also say that the US tour I did in 2010, that was a very weird experience because I went to 10 cities in 13 days.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never been so exhausted in my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And in every city you go to, you have this media escort that picks you up at the airport and escorts you through the day. And in LA, we had a wonderful media escort. Her name was Karin, actually, but with an E. And she said something that I've carried with me ever since. She said that, well, American authors say that there's only one thing that's worse than a book tour, and that's no book tour.
Yeah. True that.
Yeah.
True that. Be careful.
That was a bizarre experience. I would work until like 1 o'clock in the morning. You know what it's like. It's these late evenings with the bookshops dealers and the people in every country. They want to take you to dinner, and you come back to the hotel at like 1 o'clock, and then you get picked up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go to the airport. And it was hard. It was amazing, but it was hard.
Yeah, over the years I've seen every state except for Alaska.
Yeah.
And my first tour was 30 days in 28 cities.
Oh my
So,
God.
but I was also 30.
Yeah.
So that made a big difference.
You did have a little bit more energy then.
I don't know how I did it. It was
crazy.
crazy.
What did you think of Sweden?
Sorry?
What did you think of Sweden?
I love Sweden. I went to the book festival in Gothenburg. I know I'm not
that's amazing. We call it Sodom and Gomorrah in Gothenburg.
Yeah. I mean, those were some wild parties.
Oh, it's a good party place.
And let's just say I waited 9 months to make sure I was clear.
Yeah.
But, it was crazy, but it was also great because there's a very international element to it. So you get to meet a lot of authors from places, like if you go to Book Expo in the United States, you don't get to meet Finnish authors generally.
No.
So it was really great meeting all these different people. And I love Sweden. I'm not crazy about your food. I'm just going to be real honest. It was
it's better than gone, though.
Yeah, I did find some things.
You haven't been taken to the right restaurants. I could take you to
well, you're going to take me the next time.
Challenge accepted.
So this is my last question before we get reader questions. What is the strangest question you ever got from a reader?
Oh my goodness. It's hard to pick because I've gotten thousands of questions from readers through. I think the weirdest question was if you would ever serve, because I love cooking. If you would ever cook a person, how would you cook them?
There's like recipes on the internet. They can't Google that.
I mean, how difficult would it be? Just look up Jeffrey Dahmer recipe cookbook.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's not weird at all. And I'm sure you weren't unsettled.
I don't think it's weird. I don't think it's weird. I just love hanging out with people who doesn't think it's weird.
Well, you've come to the right place. Let's we'll throw this back to Politics and Prose. Hello. Do we have questions?
We do. We have a bunch of them. First one is for Camilla, but I'll ask it to both of you. Abby wants to know, how much of yourselves do you see in your novel's protagonists?
Oh my goodness. I've had two major female protagonists. One is Erica Falk, who's in my Fjallbacka crime series. She's been with me for 10 books. And then I have Faye, who is in The Golden Cage. And I would say I'm like a mix of both of them. Erica is more down to earth and everyday. She's a mom, she's a wife. And Faye is more badass. So I guess Faye is more like I would love to be at sometimes. I even have friends calling me sometimes now after reading The Golden Cage, saying that, oh, I did a Faye today. I walked into my boss my boss's office, and I did a Faye today, and I love that. I love to do a Faye sometimes, but I'm also Erica.
Wow. I am, well, obviously, because I'm really tall and thin and very scientific, I could obviously be Sarah, who I've written about for 20 years almost.
Have we met?
Yeah.
I was just checking it's the right person.
It's a filter. It's a filter. But you know, I'll tell you this, like I was at the doctor's office with my dad, for an appointment for him, and there was a toddler running around, and the kid ran for the door, and the mother said, "Oh, stop her, she'll run into the hall." And I like put my hands out, which did not stop her. And I ended up having to pick her up. And I was like, Jesus Christ, this thing is so heavy. What, are you feeding her concrete? And I guess the look on my face, and my dad said to the mother, she's never held a baby before. So when I write my character Faith, I have to read mommy blogs, and they hate children as much as I do. It's like, and you read what these kids do, they are like terrorists. They're awful. There's sleep deprivation, the constant screaming.
You do not know what true hatred of children is until you've had 4 of them.
Exactly. Well, you know what causes it? Stop.
Yeah. Well, I kind of change husbands instead and hope
there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Very, very smart.
Well, thank you both for that one. Kind of going off of that, the book trail asks, when the Golden Cage comes to TV, who would you have to play Faye?
Oh my God, that's such a hard question for a writer, because you always try to picture someone, or, you know, playing your main character.
Reese Witherspoon.
Yeah, she would be cool. Or like Jessica Biel would be cool, because she's got like that vulnerable but strong kind of essence to her. So that's the kind of thing I would look for. So maybe Jessica Biel or Reese Witherspoon. I mean, I love Reese and anything. So
love it. IS says, you're truly one of my favorite authors. Do you think you'll write more books about Fjallbacka?
Yes, I do. I do have under contract at least one more book about Fjallbacka. So I will at least write one more book, and I think I will keep writing more as well. But I'll do all other things as well. I've actually got a bit of a secret project going on, so we'll see about that.
Fabulous. This next one is for both of you. They ask, what tends to spark the ideas for your books? For example, do you draw from personal experience? Like, what gets you going, you know, with the first idea for a book? What inspires that?
Karin, you go first.
Oh, damn. I was just going to say what you said. I have no idea. Do you? I mean, it just happens. It's in my brain, and suddenly it's a story.
I just usually get like a picture in my head, like a single picture, like someone hanging from a noose, or a table that is empty, but it looks like a family just got up and walked out of there and disappeared. And then I start thinking about, where did they go, or why is someone hanging there? So it's, for me, it usually starts with like a small picture in my head.
That's very cool.
I guess they wanted a much more intelligent answer than that, but
well, first I read Proust, and then Dickens, and then
yeah.
Totally. No.
Everything is stolen from Dostoevsky.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll do a couple more. This one says, this person just wants you to go a little bit more in depth about how, like, why you wanted to try something new, if the Golden Cage is such kind of a diversion from the Fjallbacka series.
Well, I think for me as a writer, as a person, I'm very restless. I constantly want to try new things. And also as an author, as a writer, I think that the moment you start to get too comfortable in what you're doing, and too much in your comfort zone, that's when you stop developing as a writer. And I do want to be, I wanted to feel a bit afraid again, because when you start feeling a little bit afraid, when you have those butterflies in your stomach and you're not quite sure if you can do that, that's when your development that's when you keep growing as a writer. So I think that was my motivation. I want to be constantly a little bit afraid. Sorry, my English is, yeah.
No,
Yeah, me too.
definitely. I'll end the audience questions with this last one, and then I've got a question of my own. Bernadette asks, Camilla, fun question: Swedish chef, yay or nay?
Oh, the Swedish chef. That's what introduced Swedish to all of you American people. So, is that, I'm not quite sure that's how we sound, but yeah.
He sounds Danish, doesn't he?
That sounds, to us Swedish, it sounds more like Danish, because Danish to Swedish people sounds like, and I'm not sure about the whole throwing things that we don't generally throw things. We're like very careful people.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Not a cultural phenomenon. Good to know. And I would love to know, while we are still in this moment of like social distancing and isolation, what kind of books are you both turning to at this time? What are you reading?
Camilla?
I'm actually rereading one of my favorites at the moment, Donna Tartt, The Secret History. I do read it like every other year, and I've just started yesterday to read it again. I love it.
Well, I just finished this one. Fantastic. Everybody should get it. And this is what I'm reading.
Oh, it's cool. I love those kind of books.
Yeah, it was like $90 freaking dollars, but
Yeah.
it's written by a guy who like was a white collar criminal, and it's literally a survival guide of how to be in prison and not get raped or killed.
Are you preparing for something, Karin, or you're just?
It's for a book. Well, this is men's prison. You know, I mean, women's prison's different. Just find like the biggest dyke to I'll be yours. Just don't.
Yeah,
don't let me get hurt.
Covered. You got me covered.
Yeah. So, and I mean that with love. But this is like it's real. This is real stuff.
They're quite small though, so I'm still a little bit worried. Yeah.
Yeah. This is the 3rd edition, but it's a definitive guide. But it's basically for rich white people who get caught, which, I mean, how rare does that happen? And, you know, how to do it.
That's wild.
I heard Bernie Madoff read it.
Every year who gets caught, that's invaluable.
Yeah, exactly.
Dang. Well, thank you both so much. I think we're about at time to wrap up. So thank you both so much. This was just so much fun. And I will direct people to those links in the chat. You can buy The Golden Cage and also pre-order Karin's upcoming book, The Silent Wife, from Politics and Prose tonight. So that's pretty great and special. We thank the audience for all coming and sharing their early evenings with us. Your patronage and your book purchases are really what enable Politics and Prose to continue our programming, continue the kind of quality of content we bring to you. And so we thank you so much and do encourage you to go to the website and keep those book sales in. Also, thanks to our partners at the Swedish Embassy in DC. They've been wonderful through this process, and we thank them for bringing Swedish authors to the US all the time. And so until next time, everybody, we hope that you stay well and stay well read. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Marla, thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Karin.
Thanks.
Bye.